Welcome to the Free Outside Show. Today we have my big announcement. We have some ketone talk. We have all kinds of good stuff. The schedule for the year, how I think about goals and applying it to my big year that I hope is coming up. So let's get right into the Free Outside podcast. Ideas or dreams, interchangeable, goals, and then plans. That's how I think of everything. From back in 2011 when I was through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, I was had the idea of being a triple crowner. And then that kind of turned into the idea of, well, maybe I'll have to do the Continental Divide Trail and the Appalachian Trail in the same year in order to be a triple crowner. Or maybe I could just do all of them in the same year and do the calendar year triple crown. So that was the idea phase. And then it became a dream once I kind of ruminated, thought about it, and decided it was something I really wanted to do. So idea, dream, and then I had a corporate job that I didn't really like for about almost 2 years, and there were some issues with the company. It was already splitting apart. And that's when it turned into a goal. And then over a few months, the plan was crafted, and then I was able to go after it. So I think that's kind of how things build. You have that idea, and then it either gets cast away or it becomes a dream, and you have hopefully more dreams than you can ever have goals. And so it's like a pyramid. I like to think of it from the top down, where the biggest overarching thing is you have the most ideas, and then after that you have the second most dreams, and then after that you have the third most goals, and you have more goals than you can ever actually fit into your life's plan. And so the plan is basically all the things that you're going to put full effort into and go after. So you can't have more plans than you have dreams, or else you're just superficially checking things off that might be other people's dreams. You can't have more goals than you have ideas, because how are you even going to craft those goals? So this is how I think about things out there. So I had the idea in 2020, if you remember that interesting year, and everything kind of went to crap. We'll just not cuss here, because usually my rule on cussing is I like to think of it as a guest can take off the filter of cussing. So once they say a cuss word or a curse word, then that's what we're adopting. That's kind of how the conversation flows. No big deal. Well, we can just mark the episode as explicit, and sometimes it can convey more emotion to put in a curse word. And so that's really how I think of it. So they cuss first, and then it's a cussing podcast. But anyways, COVID ruined my goal of going after the Appalachian Trail record and the Pacific Crest Trail record. I was going to try them in the same year, and I was also in the Barkley Marathons that year. Things didn't work out for a number of reasons. Most of you know what happened in that rough year. I ended up working at a grocery store, but that was when I had that idea and then that goal, and it was turning into a plan to go after the record on both those trails and do the Barkley Marathons. Was it realistic? I don't know, but I was going to plan and go after it and test my limits. That's the point of all these things. And so that goal, I guess, I took a step backwards from a plan. I never really turned it into a full plan because things got ruined in March. But that goal never really left. And I've been thinking about it for a long time. And it's sort of one of those things like, what do you want to get through, or in my case, probably age out of, or feel like I can't go after anymore? And what do you not want to feel like you didn't go after? And I think the big one for me is the Appalachian Trail. The John Muir Trail was pretty high up there, but was able to nab that record in 2022. The Pacific Crest Trail, it's always been, I guess, maybe a dream, somewhat of a goal, but just with how fire season is gone, and especially talking to Katie Gunvalson in the last episode, it's just become, I don't know, something that I can't turn into a plan. It feels too hard to plan with mostly fire stuff. And so right now, going after the Appalachian Trail record, self-supported this year, is a goal. Why is it a goal? It's, turning it into a plan, but in order to get there, some sections of the trail are not even open because of Hurricane Helene. So that needs to happen. My schedule just need to hone in and figure that out. I coach about 20 athletes or so. Probably going to take on one or two more if you guys want to reach out. Um, but I would go after the Appalachian Trail record in August, probably southbound. And so that is the plan. Working on some gear ideas to be a little bit innovative because me and Nick Fowler have like when we met, we actually just like spent I think 3 days backpacking together, and that's kind of how we got to know each other, which is how anyone should get to know each other. I think it's just a wholesome way to spend a bunch of time together. And we both think of things in terms of efficiency. I remember he asked me like how I like save time in FKTs, and it was this big thing of like even in the rain, tear down and setup of from like hiking or running to asleep needs to be like 5 minutes. I think it was like 4 minutes tear down, 6 minutes setup, something like that. And I think it blew his mind. And now he's even better at it than I am. So, a lot of thoughts in terms of efficiency. It's a really fun brain exercise as far as like plans and ideas for how to improve things and then just turning those into different things. I have a sewing machine, just playing around with all kinds of stuff. So, I'm pretty excited about that goal. And then on the backs of it, I am in on the wait list of this secret race I probably can't talk that much about. So we won't. Maybe we'll do an episode on figuratively what possibly that race could be because it's just so fun and interesting and everyone loves that topic. When I've mentioned it on my TikTok, yeah, I do have one. It's mostly like clips of the podcast and things like that. I share every time I've shared on that topic, I think I've got like 5 million views or something. Like it's incredible. Usually I get like 200 views for video. I'm not like millions. So people love this specific secret thing. So won't talk further about that. So that would stack up earlier on and then leading into Cocodona 250, which I will be doing for my 5th year. Feeling really good about this year. I'm running really good. I just got back from a run, which was kind of flatter and then some elevation in the middle of it. No big deal there. So into that, and then sort of poking around with this idea of a build into a race, and then something specific, and then into the Appalachian Trail. So possibly even sneak a 100 miler in sometime in that June, July area, TBD. So that's kind of how the schedule is shaping out and what kind of has me motivated currently. And just how I think of things. I think this whole concept of like ideas slash dreams into goals into plans is a really good way to hone in on what you actually care about because I think all of us like we're in the most creative period of time ever. Why I say that is there's so many sources of creativity and inspiration across social media, like books. You can get one delivered to you immediately, either by purchasing or renting from the library, reading on Kindle. So the sharing of information is out there. And then also the turnaround. Like you can take an idea, create a video, and have it out within an hour, couple hours, 10 minutes, depending on the quality you're doing. I think that is so fascinating. And it's for one made it so there's so many different niches, so many different people. Like you can find your people and connect with them and realize that they're your people faster than ever, but it's also more crowded than ever. So it can be hard to sift through the different kinds of people to find your people. And I think my people are unique. You guys are awesome. I mean, in about 7 months, we've built this podcast to the level that people are sponsoring it. I mean, John G is jumping on board to sponsor the podcast, which is crazy in just 7 months. So it's you guys sharing, liking, reviewing, subscribing that helps us get that support. So thank you so much. Continuing to do that is awesome. I've started putting content on Patreon too every week. If you want to support it there, that'd be awesome. And I'm going to start sharing the journey from like right now into the Appalachian Trail record. I have some pretty big plans and ideas for how I would be capturing, putting stuff out. I really like the like docu-series type thing, but kind of rougher around the edges of what a day in the life or what a category kind of entails. And what I mean by that is what is the training structure, the training philosophy, the training idea like for the Appalachian Trail record? And is it going to work? We don't know. That's the whole concept. What is the resupply strategy like? What's the fueling plan? What gear do I take? All these I think could be really fun, short little episodes. And I have a pretty good plan laid out. Just need to come up with any funding to put something out there. And if not, I could do a hack job on it myself. So we'll see. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/free outside, and try to put as much content up there as I can. Also, freeoutside.com has lots of great stuff adding to it. Just got back from Big Bend too. I'm going to be adding some or putting together something like Los Padres, where it was like, here's a walkthrough of what happened in Big Bend, how I'd explore the park. I think it would be pretty fun. It was a unique trip. Saw javelinas, ran a bunch, probably did like 35, 36 miles of backpacking and another 45 miles of running, or 40 miles. So really productive trip. I'm running as good as ever and being really smart about it too. And yeah, that's kind of the plan for this year, how things are going to unfold. I would say 1A, 1B goals are Cocodona and the Appalachian Trail, FKT. I don't think they're in any way mutually exclusive. I think it's a great build into a race, and then about 12 weeks later, go for the AT record. So building in recovery, bounce back, I think not a problem, and really good way to kind of sharpen and bring together both that physical fitness and that fatigue resistance, which I think is exactly where you want your body to be for an FKT or a race in general. Is basically fatigue resistance is like that ability to stay on the treadmill and keep going. And then your physical fitness is, and running economy, etc., is basically that idea of how fit can you physically be? What can you physically do? And then the mental side is that fatigue resistance. And that's big philosophy on what I coach on too. I was just texting with an athlete today on whether or not it was worth going on a run in some bad conditions to be tougher. And in a lot of cases, I don't think you need to build pure toughness. Simply running on a treadmill can build that fatigue resistance or mental toughness in itself, especially if you're doing uphill treadmill intervals, which are rough. Okay, moving on. I had an athlete reach out about ketones and ask about them. And so I looked up some studies. I did some research on this, and I just didn't like how some of the studies are funded, especially by the ketone companies, and how they contradict each other, or some of them have really low sample sizes, like, 20 or less athletes is just really hard to grab insights from. And so I thought I would just attack this topic from a different perspective, because I have taken ketones. I have tried them in all of the different ways. I've tried multiple different brands. Let's see. Yeah, I've tried 3 different brands. And I've taken them before exercise, during exercise, and after exercise. I've taken them in more of a fast packing scenario. I took them during the stage race that I did. So I've experimented with them, and I was just going to give a full on anecdotal experience of ketones, because I just don't feel that good about projecting all the science that seems quite biased and maybe not that applicable. I think there's a lot more in cycling, but just with a number of biomechanical things, I'm not sure that I'm ready to say anything other than how I've felt with them. Okay, so in my experience, ketones do have a benefit. The only one I'm going to stake my claim on is they have helped when I'm very tired and maybe hallucinating or losing it a little bit. They have brought me back to earth. Like they have grounded me again. Like I could be hallucinating, having a hard time focusing, but then I'm lucid again or feeling more with it for 3 or 4 hours because I've taken one. That has seemed to work the best. It's worked multiple times in a night. So in Cocodona, I didn't take ketones until maybe night 2, and I was very tired and hallucinating, having a hard time focusing on anything. But then I took some and I could snap too. Like it was maybe it took 20 minutes or so for it to hit, but I wasn't hallucinating. Like it didn't feel like the ground was bouncing or that I was in an earthquake again. It felt like I was zeroed right back into where I was at. So I've found anecdotally that is the most across the board helpful way. Another time I took them, I trained with them. Just I wouldn't jump in and do a race without training with them. I took them in throughout Jack. Wow, sorry. I took them throughout Javelina 100. I took one shot every loop. I found they worked pretty good. I feel like it was more of a placebo though, because my rate of perceived exertion was about standard for a race. I knew I was pushing it. It didn't drop my heart rate as much or really at all. If anything, I felt like it was raised, but there were other factors as far as heat and stuff involved in that race. So I didn't feel like it aided by taking them in the moment or helping me fuel or anything like that. I think if anything, feeling more would have aided in that race. I just did not feel the effect. I think there was some placebo effect of I'm taking these. There's some science at the time I believe they might lower your heart rate while you're out there pushing. And now looking back, I don't think that is the case. I haven't done any controlled studies or anything, but then just thinking that they helped, I think made me really believe they help. And a number of other tools at the time like that is kind of how I got 80 miles into Javelina in about 12 hours or so. And then I had a blow up and pretty rough lap at the end of that. I think the ketones could have contributed to some of the stomach issues at the end too. I'm not sure. I don't think there's a noticeable benefit there. I have taken them since in the middle of longer efforts and stuff too. And I'm still pretty firm on I don't think they add anything there. So I would say definitely aid in mental sharpness, especially when you're really tired. I haven't tried them when it's like, oh, afternoon lull, I could have a cup of coffee or ketones. I think that's kind of BS. And I think some podcasters who are sponsored by these things say this. And I don't think it's more than a placebo. Uh, but I think when you're extremely tired, there is some impact because it's just utilizing a different energy source. And then the last time I've used them is in recovery, and this is the one where I think there's the biggest question mark. I don't know how I feel. I think there is some benefit in taking them after a hard effort or pushing hard. I took them the first 3 days or after the first 3 stages of Grand to Grand old Grand to Grand stage race, which so it was like a 50K, a 50K, and then a 50 miler. I took ketones right after all those. I bounced back and felt good for every stage. I got second in that race, learned a lot. I didn't really take the right gear. I did a whole podcast on it if you want to listen to it. But I do think there may be something there bouncing back. But I also didn't do that race again without doing that. So it's really hard for me to know. I think this is the one area where I would experiment more with ketones. And so I would experiment with them. Just to summarize where I'm at with ketones, I would experiment with them as far as recovery. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. I'd also keep an eye on any more or maybe just research institution backed studies that are more maybe more bigger sample size and less bias. Keep an eye on that. And I also think they work in a 200. I think it's a good tool to have in your toolkit of I'm losing it, but I can't sleep or I don't want to sleep. They might be good to take then. So they could have some impact on FKTs. It depends how long the FKT is. In just thinking about my FKT experience, about the last 12 hours of the John Muir Trail record, I think ketones, it would have been really interesting if I could do an experiment and put myself back in that scenario. And instead of taking a 15-minute nap, try taking a ketone shot. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just wanted to throw that out there because I got the question from actually two athletes in the last month have brought this up on calls, and that's sort of how I feel about it. But take this with, I don't think it's a sustainable or worth it thing to purchase continually. Actually, Ketone IQ sponsor me. But I think for most people, it's something that is good to have in the toolkit during a race, probably a 100 miler and above. I think it can be something to maybe take once a week after the hardest effort of the week for recovery and bounce back, or if you're doing back to back hard sessions or during a training camp. But I don't think it's a day to day thing you should use. I think there's a lot of studies and current research going on about them, but that is my opinion of where things are at and kind of how I feel about it. Okay, moving on to the next topic. It is so crazy to me. When this comes out, it'll be the 10th of January, I believe. And there are still like people rolling out their top tens of things. It feels like once we get to the end of having to say Happy New Year, I don't know if we can still be doing a countdown of last year. Like we're already past accepting it's a new year. We're not saying Happy New Year on, I hope, the 10th. Maybe we are. I don't know. It's always weird to me. I have a hard enough time saying hi to people on trails or hello or excuse me. I just get really shy in person, which is why this podcast has been so pure, helpful, and good for me to converse and interact with people. I've always been really shy. You get to see a 30-minute, 30 to 2 hour, I guess, is our longest episode, minute of me just on here talking, sharing my thoughts, trying to connect my brain to my mouth, basically, which is something I've never been good at. Like my brain is so active. I can visualize so many things. I think in the most robust pictures, and it's really cool, but it's really hard to put into words. And I think getting this many reps and practicing has been really important. So thank you for that. That is probably why we already have a sponsor and we'll announce another one soon, and partnerships galore. So really cool. So yeah, you could support us by shopping at johng.com and tell them I sent you when there's a survey at the checkout thing. I love their shorts. That's the main reason I signed with them back. I think it's been 3 years now. But it's not a ton of money. I think I've even said on here, I don't think there's an NDA on how much I make, but I sprinkle it in throughout, pretty open about things. It's not a ton of money, but I really like their shorts. The pockets are good. I wore them before I was even sponsored. Actually, I reviewed some of their gear before I even knew really anything about the company. So that is how unbiased and fell into that I was, and the ethos of colorful stuff also good. So support them. I really like the Vortex gloves in the winter because they're real regular gloves, but they have this wind flap that rolls over them. So johng.com, love their stuff. So go check it out. Tell them I sent you, or just go to their social media and write at me in the comments or something funny like that. I don't know, some way to show something. Where were we? I think I was just talking about how the podcast has been really helpful, and you get to see this 30-minute snapshot of me and just learning, going through the trials. And kind of why I wanted to do this structure is just looking at other industries or places that come before trail running and are way bigger. I really like comedy, so I naturally look there. I love comedy and sports. And so those are the two areas where there are these solo podcasts where, especially really in the early days of podcast and the internet, would this be like web 2, I think? Yeah, probably like the person-to-person networking type thing. You would have Bill Burr, who had the Monday morning podcast, and he would just like rant or riff for so long. And I don't think trail running ever really had a space for that. And so while I wanted to have guests on, and I think it's important and fun to interact and learn, I mean, this whole podcast is like a learning, improving thing for me. I go to therapy because I can't share or be social very well, and I'm learning and I'm trying to improve. I will put a 150% effort into anything I do and trying to get better. I think it's frustrating for me because I can't ever turn anything off, But launching the podcast and committing to 2 episodes a week has been so healthy for my growth, just interpersonally, and even knowing how to talk to someone in person. Like, it's hard for me to do eye contact or venture outside and stuff like that. So that is where that is at. And I just really wanted to launch a podcast where it gave me the platform to talk to a camera and share my thoughts and get better at voicing thoughts in my head and turning them into words. I think it's a gift or a gift for some, and a process that you really have to work on before you can figure out how to do it. And I don't know, I just consume an incredible amount of research and news, studies, thoughts, ideas, science. I love the coaching side of it and how the sport of trail running is so new, and how connected with that our fastest known times are trail records. And then right on the backs of that is through hiking, and how they're all connected and use the same sciences. And I love learning and taking the science from one to the other. And it's even cooler because, like, cycling is, some people say it's like 10 years ahead. It's definitely like 25 years ahead. But like, I would say we're in the late 90s of cycling in trail running today, where it's kind of crazy. There's like these weird stories where someone's like editing Wikipedia pages. We're not like totally professionalized yet. We're in that middle ground. So that's kind of where I think it is. And I want to share and be on the forefront of bringing some of these things up there, having some fun, like the award show, but also giving some things that you can like take away, use, think about in normal life, and some opinions, because I am blessed to get to try a number of these things. I do a ton of gear testing. I actually just ran with a new pack that a company is going to be putting out some version of. And so I'm helping do some testing, some beta testing or something, alpha testing, because I'm an alpha, of this new pack. And I just like talking about what I know is coming down the pike, what I've heard, and go from there. And I think that's kind of been the fun part of having this podcast. And I just thought I wanted to kind of explain that. And so going into 2025, which is where we're at, I'm going to share a little bit of insight into what I'm thinking as far as like the build to the Appalachian Trail, how I'm using like the stair step of races. I might even add one more in, how things are going with that. Just a look at how I'm approaching it, because I don't think it's very common, or there's very much out there on that 200-mile approach into FKT approach. I think they're very related, but it's just that direct line of, here's how I think about these things, here's how I'm attacking them from both the gear, the fueling, the science side, and what I think works and doesn't work. One thing I'm experimenting with now is, I think there's the right amount of fueling for these events, and then there's too much. And I think it's really tied to, let's see, how would I put this? So it's tied to output, basically. So if you're moving at the top end of basically zone 2, which is your hard run, like your pace you could run for quite a long time, then you can fuel pretty heavily. I think your heart rate is low enough that you can process it, but your output is high enough that you're burning it. But if you drop into more of a zone 1, then I think you can process it easier, but you're not burning it to that same level. So I do think there's a sweet spot. I think that the people running like 100-milers will be higher carb than they even are now. Like, let's say David Roach is taking in 130 grams of carbs an hour. I think we're going to level off and see people start sticking to that 140 to 150 range. But I also think that the max is going to be in that 60 to 70 carb range for maybe 200 milers or FKTs that are multi-day, something like that, where it's that 300 calories an hour type thing and that usable amount of carbs. I think this also comes with the caveat of, once the duration of what you're going after increases to a certain amount, there's this other factor of feeling satiated, which is definitely working in mentally too, that I don't think we think enough about. You can't just have gels for 2 weeks. Maybe you can for 4 or 5 days, But when it gets longer than that, I think there's this satiating thing and just how the stomach interacts and works and has to have things moving through it. I don't think you can be on like a liquid diet. One of my earliest memories of a liquid diet is one of the assistant coaches on my baseball team was on one to lose weight when I was in like 6th grade or something. And so I just remember, I think it was my mom or someone else told me that it was actually like a pretty dangerous way to lose weight. So that's kind of just a weird anecdote of something that stuck in my mind of how I think about things, of this whole thing of liquid calories or gels or something comes up. And then it pings to this memory of, oh, I visually remember we were in this bar, had wood tables, all these things. And this is when I link that to the auditory memory of being told that this was a dangerous way to lose weight, but he had like the help of a doctor, a nutritionist, or someone certified. And that's how he was doing it. And that makes me think of the ultra running side of, it's the Wild West. A lot of people are trying these things without depending on anyone. And I think it's pretty proven that it works, especially from cycling in that 1 day or 12 hour, like a fast 100 miler amount of time. But once you apply that to a longer amount of time, there's not that much evidence and hardly anyone's even trying it. So I think this is where people are going to start trying it and it's not going to work. So that's just my hot take. Basically a lot of anecdotes, hot takes, and sharing how I think of goals and ideas in this episode. I'm going to probably go through Big Bend in the next few days and do a podcast, like a video recap of that, which will be fun. Yeah, I haven't recorded with a guest in like a month because I was gone for 3 weeks. So I did a bunch of recording ahead of time and then slowly releasing them. And so I'm out of practice, but should have some cool guests coming too. And it's going to be a cool year. We're going to try to cover all kinds of stuff. We already got someone doing the calendar year Triple Crown. He started with the Florida Trail. So he's going to do that whole, what do you call it? Like Appalachian Trail extended or whatever. And the calendar year Triple Crown. So we'll see how that goes. His name is Punisher. He's out there. So events and things are already beginning for 2025. I'm going to try to cover the gamut of them, but also this is a solo show and just get to rant, talk about, and say all these things that help me get better at this and hopefully are interesting to you. So thanks for following. The more you share, the more it helps. Bonus stuff on Patreon. Really appreciate everything that you guys have helped make this. It's been probably the biggest impact on my life in 2024. So I hope that continues. We're not even a year in yet, and I've produced like 70 hours worth of content just in podcast episodes. That is insane to me. I can't believe I'm willingly putting myself out like this. So really appreciate that. Love you guys. Stay elite, my friends.